Hi ladies, today I'm going to be showing you through a range of Bernina sewing feet, and these are all the Bernina hemming feet. They're feet that can be used for hemming fine sheer fabric, they can be used for hemming cotton fabrics, and they can also be used for hemming knit fabrics. Now before overlockers were around, everybody hemmed their hems by their sewing machine. So back when you find the old Singer treadle sewing machines, your first Berninas, you'll probably find that there are hemming feet available. Now there are many feet in the range, and on the Bernina USA site you can find a lot of information about all your different sewing feet, and I have, obviously you can download this PDF of this instructions, and on the back it shows you a lot of different size bags you can make. So I'm going to show you the different edges, and I'm going to show you how to make a simple little travel bag, and these are wonderful for your lingerie, for your shoes, for your pajamas, for your jewellery, as a laundry bag, for your curling iron. It's unlimited what you can make. But before I show you the hemming feet, I'm just going to show you an edge you can do just with your simple number 10 edge stitch foot. So simply by turning your fabric under 2 to 3 centimeters onto the wrong side, I'm using white thread so you'll be able to see my stitching. I'm using my number 10 edge stitch foot. Now the edge stitch foot comes with a guide that you can run along the edge of the fabric, and by using your needle positions you can simply guide this guide along your work. So I'm going to put my needle position 3 clicks to the left because I have 11 needle positions on my machine. If you've only got 3 needle positions, you'll put it far left. If you've got 5 needle positions, you'll probably put it 2 to the left. So I'm putting mine 3 to the left, and I've put my stitch length a little bit longer on 2.5 length. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle stop down function so that every time I stop sewing the needle will be in the work and I can fold my fabric under. I don't actually choose to iron this because it's such a narrow seam that you burn your fingers. So I'm just turning it up very narrow. Needle stop down, it stops every time in the work, and it means it will not move. So I'm just sewing down with my needle position to the left. Now if I wanted an even narrower finish, I could trim all of this back and then I could have a very narrow finish. But to finish this particular stitch off, I'm simply rolling my fabric over and I am top stitching it again, and this time my row of stitching is going to go very close to my first row of stitching, and I'm going to have a narrow seam. And there I've got a very narrow turned over seam on my garment. Okay, so I've had to do 2 rows of stitching. Now with a rolled hemming foot, however, and I'm using the 2mm straight stitch rolled hemming foot, I am going to have to clear and put my needle position in the center so I don't break a needle. And if you are going to be using a lot of straight stitching feet, or you're going to be freehand quilting, or you're going to be taking up jeans, or you're going to be doing machine embroidery, it is a very good idea to purchase a straight sewing stitch plate. Now the reason why is because it has a single hole. You're going to get a better stitch quality, and your machine's not able to do a zigzag at all, so you're going to get a much better stitch. And all you have to do is let us know which model of machine you own, and you'll be able to then put this onto your machine and do a better stitch. So what I'm going to show you now is the correct way to use your hemming feet. Now if you have got one of these and you don't have any instructions, it's a very good thing I'm showing you, because you need to have read the instructions to do it correctly and to make it easy for yourself. So you just simply start off, and I am working on the wrong side of my fabric, and I'm straight stitching 4 or 5 stitches, putting my needle up, and this is the secret. You lift your foot up and you have got a tail of thread here. So you simply push your finger away, put your fabric under, and by pulling that thread, it curls your work around your sewing foot. It is very, very clever. So what I'm going to do now is start sewing. And what is happening is my fabric is going completely in a circle and it's tucking under my raw edge. So when I'm sewing, it is completely tucking under my raw edge. And all I have to do is just to keep my work straight. And my fabric allowance on this particular foot is probably about 4 to 5 millimeters, and the foot itself does all of the work. It's hemming and turning it under by itself. So this is what we did well before overlockers came in and we did rolled hemming. This is a beautiful, beautiful hem, and this is what you would do on hankies, on hems of bridal gowns, anywhere where you want a beautiful, beautiful fine edge. And it is fantastic. And don't think you can only do it on cotton fabric. It is wonderful on chiffons, which I'll get in a minute and show you how you can do it chiffons. You can do this beautiful hem on a bias cut. It doesn't just have to be on a cotton fabric. So I am hemming the top of my bag. Now in the notes it says to sew your bag in a circle and hem it then. I prefer to do it first and to hem it afterwards. So now I have got a beautiful, beautiful straight edge and it's all finished off. Now because I needed to start straight stitching at the beginning, I just used the selvage and I'll just simply cut that off now. So I'm cutting off my selvage and then I can sew my seam together later when I'm ready to show you on the overlocker. So that is called a 2mm rolled hem, and it is a straight stitch and it's just absolutely perfect every time. Now if I get some chiffon fabric and I want to roll hem it, it's going to be just as good, but what's harder than doing that is to cut it on the cross. So I'm going to cut this on the cross and show you that it is just as easy sewing a chiffon on the cross. So chiffon fabric has to be the worst fabric, and of course it is also very, very, very stretchy. So I'm again working on the wrong side of the fabric and I'm using my straight stitch 2mm rolled hemming. So do 2 or 3 stitches, lift your foot up, pull your work out, push your thread away from you, and it automatically curves your fabric over your foot. It is very, very clever. Now the only difference you need to do with the chiffon is you need to make sure that you don't have too much fabric slipping under the foot to the left of the foot. So you just need to keep a little bit of more tension on the fabric. Alright, so it's going to roll and stitch exactly the same as I have done with my cotton fabric. And if I give it a little stretch, which I'm going to do now, it will also flute my fabric a little bit, which is wonderful. So you don't have to be scared of doing your chiffons anymore. You get a lovely, lovely little edge on your edge of your chiffons. So even with a very, very soft fabric, you're still going to get a nice little rolled hem. All right. Now with your feet, this one is your straight sew 2mm rolled hemming foot. Then you have, and that foot number is 62. Then you have a 61 foot. That is a straight sew and zigzag rolled hemming foot. And that can be very, very good as well if you're doing knits. And there is a full range from 2mm right up to 6mm. and then there is also a flat felled seam as well. So there is no reason why you can't do rolled hemming on every single fabric. And even for the Bernina sewing machines, we also have a rolled hemmer foot. Okay, so they're very, very, very good. Now, if you're going to be doing a rolled hemming on an overlocker, I'm just going to show you that, and also I'm going to explain what you do on a chiffon fabric, which I'm going to get out as well. We have a lot of people that have trouble sewing chiffon, and the reason being is, and I'll do it on a coloured fabric so you can actually see that. So on a lightweight rolled hemmer, you are going to, on a rolled hemming on an overlocker, you're going to put your red tension up to about 8. You're going to bring your rolled hemming lever forward. You're going to put your stitch length right down to 1, and you're going to put your cutting width right down to 1. Now what that means is both your blades are flattened, so you'll get a nice rolled hem. So I'll just do it on some cotton fabric first to show you. And I prefer to use Metricine on my overlocker when I'm doing rolled hemming because it gives me a lovely fine edge. So I'm just simply going to test it to make sure that I've got everything set. So rolled hemming is beautiful, but you don't always want a rolled hem on your garment. But it certainly is beautiful. So on your overlocker, it is simply rolled completely the stitch over, and it's given you a lovely edge. And if you're going to do it on knits, it will give you a lovely fluted edge, or on chiffons, a lovely fluted edge as well. So I'll just stitch down the straight part, then I'm going to show you on a curve. I'll just cut this a bit smaller, it's a bit large. So this is our beautiful Kiwiana chiffon fabric that I love, and I use it for making all my wraps. I think it's gorgeous. So I'm just going to sew down here. Now some chiffons, however, the overlocking falls off the edge, and you can't fix it by just carrying on sewing. You have to stop and change. So we'll just try this one out first. So here's my rolled hemming on my chiffon. And it's not too bad, but it's not holding in some parts. So I'm very pleased because I really want to show you how to fix this. All right. So the secret to doing a chiffon on an overlocker, and I'm going to turn this round so you can see it, is you're going to get your blade completely away from your work. Okay. And what you're actually going to do is you're going to put your fabric, we'll close that up, but what you're going to do is you're going to give the overlocker fabric. So you're going to put your fabric right over to the edge here of your overlocker, and this extra fabric is going to roll in to form the stitch. And it's very, very important to do this, and you'll get a very, very nice edge. So I'll turn this back around so I can sew straight. So you always should hold your tail at the beginning just to give you a bit of tension. But what the overlock is actually doing is all that excess fabric on the right hand side, it is rolling in to form my stitch. So I will never ever have my overlocking falling off my edge again. So for fine fabrics, chiffons, difficult fabrics, this is what you want to do. Completely take away your blade. And now I have a perfect rolled hem because I have completely taken away my blade. You'll never get such a good finish. Now if you come across a fabric that even that doesn't work, you could then put your cutting width up just a little bit, and what that means is you've extended this bottom blade out a little bit, but only to about 1.5. And that will fix all your problems on your overlocker. Okay, so your rolled hem is beautiful, but it's not always the case that you want a rolled hem on an overlocker, so you can do it on your sewing machine. Now I'm just going to put my blade back down. I'm going to put it back to ordinary overlocking, so my rolled hem lever goes forward. My red tension goes back to standard, so all of these are the same. My stitch length goes back to standard 2.5 length, and my cutting width, I can move my blade to turn that, goes back up to between 2 and 3 depending on my fabric I'm using. Alright, so it's not hard to get your overlocker back to your standard settings. And every single overlocker we sell at Bernina does exactly the same. So now you can test it on a piece of fabric and make sure you're happy with your 3-thread overlocking. And I'm going to put my cutting width up just a little bit, and what that does is pull your fabric into your stitch, which I'll show you here. So if you can see there, my overlocking was falling off a little bit, and so I needed to put my cutting width up higher so that it's running beautiful and flat along that edge. And this is just a 3-thread overlocker, and then if I turn it over you can see that it's meeting on that edge. If I want to now put in my 4th thread, I can put my needle in and make it a 4-thread overlocking. For sewing up a garment, I just simply put my needle in my needle holder, lift up my needles so that I can then put it in on my left needle hole and then tighten my left needle screw. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put another reel of Metricine on. I will put just a cream on here, thread up my overlocker. Very, very important, ladies, when you're threading it through this tension, that you lift your foot up. The reason being, your tensions need to be open for the thread to go in your tension unit. So if you don't do that, what is going to happen is your thread is just going to sit on your tension unit and it's not going to actually go in it, and so it will not sew. It will just be sitting there and it won't be in your tension unit and you won't get a very good result. I'm just going to thread this by hand to show you. And sometimes it's not a bad idea if you have trouble threading. I'm not going to cheat and use my needle threaders because you need to see. You can simply get everything out of the road, and if your fingers are too big to thread your needle, have you tried using your tweezers? I find the tweezers are a much better option. It's just easier to control, it's nice and fine to get down, and this is how I thread all my needles. And then just pull it out with your tweezer. Now my machine is on a 4-thread overlock, and what that means for all of you ladies that don't have an overlocker is it means now, put my tool back where it goes, my little tweezers, is now I can fold and I can actually overlock and sew my seam in one action. I'll just turn my cutter down a little bit. Now with a 4-thread overlocker, it's actually doing 2 rows of straight sewing. So when I open up my seam, it is all straight sewing. Now I'm quite pulling on that, and that is white thread, and it is perfect on my navy fabric. So 4 threads means you can sew up a whole garment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to sew your bag together on an overlocker and give you a couple of handy hints. So here's my little bag here. I'm putting my right side to right side, and I'm going to sew up the side seam of my bag. So I'm kind of changing the rules a little bit with the instructions, because I like to sew my seam first. And my bag is not cut straight, so I'll cut that off in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this. Now, rather than leaving my tail, I'm going to lift my foot up and I'm going to bring my tail straight over towards my seam. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to sew over that tail so that later on I don't need to tidy that up. So I've sewed over my tail and I'm sewing straight down my seam to the end. And when I get to the end here, I am going to sew straight past by a stitch. I'm going to lift my foot up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my work over, and I'm going to set it back under my foot, back under my foot there, and I'm going to sew backwards. So I'm actually tightening that tail, sewing backwards over it, and then sewing off, and I don't need to neaten that edge as well. And then I just cut my thread and pull, and everything's nice and tight and neat. So I have completely finished that edge, and I have completely finished that edge. So it's a wonderful way of doing it. Now to finish off my bag, rather than having a seam on the side, I'm simply going to flatten out my bag and have my seam at the back, and I'm going to repeat that process. All right, so lift my foot up, bring my tail towards me, and set it down, cut it off, and sew to the end. A really, really good tip, and you'll wonder why you haven't been doing it for years. Sew down, lift it up, flip it over, and this is something my father taught me that he would have been taught by Bernina, I'm sure, and it's a very, very good handy hint. So you do not need to worry about having any loose threads because everything's lovely and tidy. And there I have finished my bag. Now if I want to make a base in my bag, like this, I've made a base in my bag rather than leaving my bag straight. All you do, I'll just turn this one out to show you, is, and I've left these here so you can see, is I have simply just sewn across my points of my bag to form a base on both sides. And you can either overlock that or leave it, but it just means you have got a different shape to your bag. So you can do that with your bags that you're making if you would rather have a base in your bag, which looks very, very nice. Now I'm just going to show you another method you can do for your bags. And we will do that after the break. All right, ladies, so it's time for your cup of tea or your cup of coffee. Enjoy.